All right, this Clippers team, this Clippers squad, I don't, you know what? This Clippers squad, they have to be the main protagonist. They just have to be the main protagonist. And right now, they're going through a tournament arc. Because, like, there's no other way you can just play like this. They're the main protagonist. They start off the arc struggling. They deal with adversity, and they find a way to pull off the comeback and win in the end because they're just the main protagonist. They have to be at this point. Because how does one team play just so inconsistently? One game, they don't look at all in sync. And they're just struggling, and they're playing poorly. The next game, they come out in perfect sync, perfect chemistry. Their guys show up, and they just dominate. How does that happen? The first two games of the Mavs series, they looked cooked and done. Game 3, Game 4, different situation. Game 5, back to looking cooked. Game 6, Kawhi Leonard comes up with the best performance, arguably, of the postseason. And in Game 6, they just, Game 7, they just take over as a team. Now you're in this Jazz series. Game 1 and Game 2, although they were close, they didn't really look like themselves, and they took the loss. Here in Game 3, they dominate. What do you make of this Clippers squad? They might as well be the protagonist, and they're just going through a tournament arc. I don't know what else to say. For the Jazz, Donovan Mitchell had 30 points, but that really doesn't matter. The main concern is this injury that's happening because he left the game with an injury. I believe it was maybe a right leg or a right knee injury because he was hobbling. There was no contact, but he was hobbling, and he kind of just left the court. He came back. He was on the bench. He did not return to the game, so that's some serious concern because if he's not healthy, there's no way they're winning this series. So, I mean, if you're a Jazz fan, you got to be concerned. And this is the team I picked to get to the conference finals. So I am very concerned with his injury health right now. We'll just see what happens with that. Clarkson showed up and did his thing. Gobert showed up and did his thing. Ingles definitely showed up and did his thing. The team played well, but they just got outclassed and just got straight up beat by this Clippers team that showed up. Now, Reggie Jackson played very well in the first half. He was one of the main guys that set the tone early on for them in that first half, and he came up clutch and came up big. Other than that, you know, he showed up and did his thing. Batum pitched in. He was hitting threes in the corner. He was looking nice today. But it was really the stars of LA, the two guys that showed up and balled out. Now, Kawhi Leonard, 34 points, 12 rebounds. He was fantastic. He was fantastic. He did his thing. He looked brilliant. He played like a top 5 player. In fact, he played like the top 5 player we know he is. Kawhi Leonard looked like Kawhi Leonard. This is the Kawhi Leonard we know. He's been here before. He does this all the time. We already know what he's averaging so far in the postseason. This is a Kawhi Leonard we are used to seeing, so we're not surprised by his performance. So he did his thing, 34 points. First half, he did not look nice. He was actually struggling shooting the ball. Second half, though, man took over and was just dominating. Like, it became easy for him. He was hitting everything. Kawhi Leonard just was looking like the best player in this series in that second half. He was just taking over. But really, I think it's no debate. Player of the game, Paul George. Well done. Well done. This was your best performance of this entire postseason. You showed up when your team needed you the most. And that was mostly in that first half. Because to start off the game, you guys were down 8-0. And somebody needed to set the tone on offense for how this team was going to play this entire game. Because you guys early on were not looking nice. And Paul George, as well as Reggie Jackson, stepped up in that first half and took over. And they were the main scoring unit in that first half. Paul George is the main reason why the Clippers had that lead going into the first half. So, well done to him. Like I said, I'm not asking for Paul George to drop 30 every game. No. What I'm asking of Paul George is to be the superstar he's supposed to be. Be the superstar we see in the regular season. The man so far in the postseason has been struggling to hit threes. He hit 4 threes in the first half. He was looking fantastic. He was balling, and he did not stop in the second half. I mean, the dude just hit a tough contested 3. I believe it was covered by Ingles or it was Bogdanovich, and he just pulled up for 3 and he splashed. It was perfect. That's the Paul George we're used to seeing in the regular season. The reason I'm so critical of this guy is because we see how he plays in the regular season. He's playing like a superstar. He's playing like a top 15, arguably top 10 player, and he's somewhat efficient from shooting the three. Then you get to the playoffs, and the guy you saw in the regular season just disappears. I'm not asking for him to be perfect, and I'm not asking for him to drop 30. What I want to see from Paul George is for him to play like the superstar he's supposed to be. You're not going to be efficient, and you're not going to have a great game every single game. But there are moments in the game where you need a superstar to step up and make the plays. Whether it's setting the tone early on in the game in a crucial game 3 like this, or coming up clutch down the stretch in the fourth quarter and doing your thing. Today, Paul George set the tone in the first quarter. They're down 0-2 in the series. They were already down 8-0 in this game. He was one of the main guys to set the tone on offense. While Kawhi Leonard was struggling to shoot the ball in the first half, Paul George was on fire and he set the tone. He got help from Reggie Jackson, but it was really Paul George that was pioneering this offense in the first half. And in the second half, he continued to play well. That's just what I want from Paul George. I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need you to be fantastic and put up great performances every game. Kawhi Leonard is a superstar, and we know what he brings to the table. He doesn't play fantastic every single game. All I'm asking is key moments of the game, I need you to show up and be a superstar. That's all I'm asking from Paul George. This is where the expectations come from. We know you can be a superstar, man. Just go out there and play like this. You don't have to be perfect, but there are moments in the game where you need a star to step up and lead this team. Take initiative. Just set the tone for the team. Whether it's at the beginning of the game or a crucial moment in the game when you need to come back, just set the tone. Sometimes Kawhi is not going to be able to do that. And if he's struggling, I need Paul George to do that. That's why you're our co-star. You need to be able to do that. If he was consistent in doing what he did tonight, nobody would have a problem with Paul George. You don't have to come up there and ball out and drop 30 every game. No, you don't even have to be efficient all the time. But there are moments in the game where you need Paul George to be Paul George, to be that superstar we see in the regular season. And tonight, he was that guy. No complaints for me. He's the player of the game. He set the tone when they needed it in the first half, and he's the main reason they were up in the first half. He continued to play well in the second half, and by then, Kawhi Leonard got his rhythm, went straight up hot, and just started balling in the third and fourth quarter, and he finished the game with 34 points, and he was looking spectacular and looking like the superstar he is. But that first half was crucial for them to be able to take control in the second half, and that was led by Paul George, which is why he's the player of the game. This is what you want to see from Paul George. He can still give me like 20 to 25 points, but what are those points coming from? What meaning do those points have? Did you get those points in the first half by setting the tone for your team, which helped them catapult to a win because they would continue that momentum in the second half? Did you score those points in crunch time, which helped lead your team to a potential win? I don't care how many points the guy has, just when you're willing to score, because sometimes you're going to struggle. As a superstar, you're not going to play well every game, but there are moments where you need to show up. And tonight, Paul George showed up. And he showed up in the beginning of the game. He set the tone for them. He carried them in that first half. Kawhi Leonard came in the second half, took over, and pretty much took care of the rest of this game. So that's all we want to see from Paul George. That's it. Just not even having to score 30. Just moments of the game. Be a star and show up and do what you did tonight consistently. And nobody will have a problem with you. Hell, even if you were to lose, if there were moments of the game where you showed up and Kawhi didn't, we'll hold you for that. And we're not talking about moments where you put up points in garbage time when the game is basically over. I'm talking about the game is tight and you're showing up and coming up clutch. Or you guys in the first half weren't doing anything, someone's struggling, and somebody needs to step up and take initiative. And you show up and do that. No problems then. But yeah, that's just how it is with Paul George, man. This is what we want to see. This is what we expect to see. That's where all the expectations are coming from. Which is why people continue to get mad at him and troll him and criticize him, because we see what he's doing in the regular season. We know he can play at a high level. We know he can play great in certain moments. But when it gets to the playoffs, he's not doing that. That's where the issue comes in. Like last game too, yeah, overall he had 27 points. But look at when he was scoring those points and how much of an impact they had. I think he had 10 points in the fourth quarter, but most of those points went garbage time when the game was basically settled. Those points don't mean anything. It's not just about scoring points. It's about when you are, how efficient are you in key moments? How impactful are you in key moments? That's what matters. And today, Paul George was that guy. That's why he's my player of the game. Now, overall, Clippers, man, you guys are a confusing bunch. I don't think anybody can truly understand what this team is. For some reason, when it comes to Kawhi Leonard, he just knows what to do once the team's down 0-2. Like, this team was down 0-2 against Dallas, and all of a sudden Kawhi's like, yeah, we got to show up and do our thing. And then somehow they managed to win that series in 7. Now they're down 0-2 here, and Kawhi Leonard drops 34 points, and their team wins, alongside Paul George with his best game of the postseason. And he also showed up in Game 3 of the Dallas series. So, like, maybe this team is just built to be down before they show up. You have Ty Lue as your coach, and, you know, he was the coach of the Cavs when they were down 3-1. Though everyone wants to give the credit to LeBron, so you know how that works. But, like, Ty Lue was the coach when they were down 3-1, and they found a way to win a championship. So maybe Ty Lue's just a coach that can only bring out the best of his players if they're down in the series. So who knows? Now that the series is 2-1 with Utah having the advantage, we'll see what happens in Game 4. Maybe the Clippers tie this in Game 4, and now it really becomes a series. I don't know. But the most important thing for the Jazz is worrying about Donovan Mitchell's health. However he is right now, that has to be in order, because if his health is not where it needs to be, and he ends up missing time in this series, with Mike Conley not playing, that's going to be detrimental. And honestly, I'll look at this Jazz team and be like, I don't think they can beat this Clippers team without Mitchell, because he's the main engine. He's their guy. If Donovan Mitchell is not playing, there's nothing you can do. Because now you're going to be missing both Mitchell and Conley. And at that point, you're going to ask Gobert and Ingles and Clarkson to carry this against this Clippers team. That's just too much. I just don't see that happening. So we'll see what happens regarding that. Hopefully it's nothing severe. Hopefully he'll get to play in Game 4. And we'll just see what happens with that, man. With that being said, that's all I got. That was a dominating win by the Clippers. They're such a confusing team. I don't know what to make of them, but it is what it is. With that being said, that's all I got, and I'm out of here, man. Peace.